Well, emergency food aid for 10 million Ethiopians hit by the worst drought in 50 years is expected to run out in April. That's unless donors provide $245 million by the end of February, according to the charity Save the Children. Without additional funds, there could be a potentially catastrophic escalation in severe acute malnutrition among children, which means they are likely to die without therapeutic feeding. Ethiopia's failed rains, which meteorologists blame on the El Niño weather phenomenon, have created a drought in some areas of the country worse than the 1994 crisis. Back then, water shortages and conflict combined to cause a famine that killed an estimated 1 million people. Now, for more insight into the situation in the Horn of Africa, I'm joined by Paul Doroch. He's the Director for the Development Strategy and Governance Division at the International Food Policy Research Institute. Mr. Doroch, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
Now, the question is, was this a predictable situation, especially in the Horn of Africa?
Well, the Horn of Africa, as you know, has periodic droughts. And as you also have described, this drought is especially severe. So that part is predictable. And the government of Ethiopia has made major strides in preparation for this kind of drought and for other natural disasters in the country.
Yeah. Now, were there plans that were made to at least reduce the impact of this drought? And if so, why have they not mitigated this effect?
Well, there's been a lot of progress in the safety nets in Ethiopia over the last 10 years or so. The Ethiopian government has instituted, along with the donors, a productive safety net program. And in that program, households are identified at the local level who are in need of food assistance over time, and food aid that comes into Ethiopia and other money from the Ethiopian government is targeted to these households. So that is in place, and that productive safety net program is being scaled up now. So that's a very good channel to deal with the effects of this drought at the household level. What's especially difficult about the effects of this drought, though, is that it's especially hit hard the eastern third of the country. And there's less than 10% of the population of Ethiopia living in that eastern third. But in those pastoralist areas, these households are dependent to a large extent on their livestock. There's some crop agriculture, but livestock have been very hard hit, and that means these households have been very hard hit by water shortages and so forth. The drought has affected the highlands as well, but it's particularly severe in the eastern third of the country.
Now, every time we mention drought, we also mention famine. Do they always have to go together? I mean, must there be hunger, famine if there's drought?
No, and the good news is that there are things that can be done. A lot of lessons were learned from that very serious famine in the mid-1980s. One of the things is that the Ethiopian government, after that, made a big effort to invest in infrastructure, in the roads, in the telecommunications, and so forth, that help move food from one place to the other, that let people know what the situation is. There's also been a big investment in agriculture over time. Ethiopia actually doubled its food production, its cereal production, in the last 10 years. So those things have been done. And then again, very importantly, getting the food to the households that are in need. This year, it's likely that cereal production will only be down perhaps 10%. But the people on that eastern third of the country are definitely need that relief effort.
But what I'm hearing here, there is food in the rest of the country. There's only this small part of the country that doesn't have food. So is the problem just making that food available, or rather getting it to the needy people? Is that the biggest problem?
Broadly speaking, that is perhaps one of the biggest problems. There's also an issue of children, mothers who have severe nutritional problems because of this drought, because of a shortage of food.
But it means that somebody didn't act quick enough. I mean, there's food in other parts of the country. All was needed to be done is to transport that food and make sure those people get it in time, right?
Well, I think, broadly speaking, we're still in time.
Yeah.
The calls by the different NGOs, even the government, are to make sure that things don't get very bad 4 months from now. And so this aid that comes in is very, very important. But also, the households affected by the drought directly, I mean, those households, that livestock, water is a big issue. It's not just cereal, it's not just supplemental feeding.
In a few seconds, are we in any way about to witness what we did witness way back in 1984?
I don't think so. I'm quite optimistic that the programs in place, the productive safety net, and as well as the attention that the world, the donors, the government have been giving to this problem, mean that steps will be taken. I think we learned a lot of lessons from 1984, and I'm quite optimistic that those lessons will be applied in this situation.
Hopefully nobody loses their lives.
Yes.
And hopefully before the end of February, the money that has been pledged will come in. Thanks, that's all. Mr. Doroch, thank you very much. And Paul Doroch is the Director for the Development Strategy and Governance Division at the International Food Policy Research Institute.